This week on Taking Care of Business, I'm joined by a very special guest, Jade. Welcome back. We're talking all things commercial.
We're having a real shortage of commercial entities and commercial spaces, whereas London, San Francisco, for example, it's totally the opposite. There's a lot of vacant office spaces.
Did you know in Q1, 19,000 businesses opened up in Dubai? Where are they all going?
It's really your business bay and JLTs. Downtown, obviously, there is a huge commercial presence down that way. You've got Expo City, for example, which is an amazing, commercial space.
We're also going to be talking about why people prefer to live and work in Dubai and be in the office in Dubai more so than any other part of the world. Tune in. Hi everybody and welcome back to another episode of Taking Care of Business. This week we're going to be talking about the H1 results in the commercial real estate market for DLD data as well as Allsop and Allsop. I'm joined by a very special guest, Jade, who will make her introduction herself in just a second. We'll also be talking about the huge commercial undersupply here in Dubai in comparison to other parts of the world and why more people are preferring to work here in the office rather than from home, again, in comparison to other parts of the world. Now, she's far too fabulous for me to make an introduction, so I shall let Jade do it herself. Welcome back, Jade.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I'm very pleased, very happy to be on the podcast and back at Allsop and Allsop.
Indeed, it's welcome back because second time on the podcast for you.
Yeah.
And back at Allsop and Allsop after a very short stint.
I know. Yeah, fabulous. I'm really excited to be back in a new role, in a new challenge, and really excited.
Love it. Let's get down to it. So, I posted about this not long ago, but I mentioned on one post that the grass is not always greener on the other side, or rather the grass is often greener where it's fake. Now, you joined us in 2021. You had an amazing career with us.
Yeah.
You did decide to leave.
Yeah.
But then have very quickly come back. What was it that brought you back? Why?
To be honest, like I said, I did leave. I went to a different real estate company in Dubai, and it was for a position similar to the one that I'm now in at Allsop. And I did thoroughly enjoy it. It was very different in terms of the size. It was slightly smaller. So that was also a different experience as well for me to sort of experience going from a more corporate company to a smaller company. But I think I just sort of missed a little bit of the culture and the structure of what Allsop and Allsop sort of has. So when the opportunity came to come back, for sure, I thought it was a great opportunity that I can't be missed.
And that's honestly the reason I wanted to ask you about it, because so many people will say, also, oh my God, it's such a big machine. It's so huge. Yeah. Could you get lost in the machine? And actually, as somebody that's worked here for almost a decade, I see all of the amazing stories of people that start off as you in lettings, then maybe go into sales or commercial. Then you've got associates and partners and everything else. And it for me, as somebody that's sitting on the other side of the fence, I see how the machine helps people grow in their career.
For sure. It's all about the structure, I think, as well, that is implemented from sort of day one when you come into Allsop. And I think if you've never done real estate before, or you've come from a different sector or working environment, to come and to sit and, to have that structure, it really helps to, build and succeed in this industry, which is crucial, I think.
So you would say that one of the reasons, one, you initially chose us, but two, you came back, was because of the structure and not necessarily the formality, because that could perhaps sound a bit negative, but the framework that Allsop and Allsop offers gives you the opportunity to be successful.
Of course, and obviously the exposure and everything like that the marketing and everything like that is also a huge plus point at Allsop as well.
Perhaps I'm biased, but there's no denying we do very well in what we do.
Exactly.
Good. Exactly. Okay, so let's jump into some of the figures about commercial real estate, because as we've both touched on, I'd have done it in a previous life. Maybe I'll do it in a future life. Who knows? But in Q1 alone, we've had 19,000 new businesses open in Dubai, which is actually a 17.6% year-on-year increase.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think what you're seeing, worldwide, if you look perhaps in other cities across the world, they're having a complete it's totally different. Here we're having a real shortage of commercial entities and commercial spaces, whereas London, San Francisco, for example, it's totally the opposite. There's a lot of vacant office spaces. There's a lot of commercial buildings that are, available that haven't been leased or rented or sold in a long time. And I think that is due to a lot of things. You could look at the crime, you could look at the cost of living crisis in those places, whereas Dubai, we don't really have that. The crime is so low. The tax benefits have been here. There's lots more positives. So what we're tending to see now is a lot of companies are wanting to set their MENA region headquarters up here and move from those cities which are perhaps lacking in spaces that maybe Dubai isn't.
Well, I guess they're a bit more traditional in terms of the way they operate. And you've just mentioned there about tax benefits and lower crime here.
Yeah.
But one thing which I think is for sure is the level of work from homeness that you see in other parts of the world versus here.
Yeah.
You will have seen in the news not so long ago, and then it's been refreshed because they put the renders out, the building in Canary Wharf, the HSBC building.
Yes.
Obviously, huge HSBC building in Canary Wharf. Everybody knows what it is, where it is. Empty. Of course, COVID's happened. Lots of people are now working from home. Even in the wake of the pandemic, people are still working from home, and they don't need the office space.
Yep.
So they're converting it to residential, which kind of plays into what you just said there. There's a real shortage of commercial real estate space here, an abundance of commercial real estate space in places like London.
Yeah.
But it's probably got something to do with working from home. People want to be in the office here in Dubai, right?
For sure. And I think, yes, you do have obviously companies that are still using this hybrid, working remotely and trying it out and everything. But what you do tend to see here is, I don't know whether it's the work ethic or not, but you tend to find that majority of companies want their staff in the office, which is obviously, great for us in one aspect. But then on the flip side, it's, we are having that struggle with, the undersupply of commercial units across the board.
So when you say undersupply of commercial units, I'm sure I'm not alone when I say this, but let's use downtown as an example, because I think downtown, or at least Business Bay, were top areas, right?
Yeah.
I think it was Business Bay and JLT, which were the top areas in H1. When I'm walking in downtown with my dogs, there are lots and lots of spaces which are not necessarily being used, maybe shop fronts or cafes or restaurants and things. So when you say that there is a shortage of commercial space, are you referring to office space or something else?
Yeah, mainly office spaces, really. You tend to find that obviously the majority of where we do business is really your Business Bay and JLTs. Downtown, obviously, there is a huge commercial presence down that way. You've got Boulevard Plaza, which is arguably one of the best buildings in Dubai for commercial spaces. But they're not as many. There is only a couple of commercial areas in downtown where people want to have their office spaces. And obviously they're at great costs. And again, supply, there is not that many of them. With retail and things like that, there is obviously a little bit more, a few more options. Okay. But for people that are coming, that are wanting to set up, companies that want to work from an office, they tend to be not as many. We don't have as much available.
And that's because developers aren't building any, or because they're not in the right area? Because actually, if we talk about areas, I don't know whether or not it's the same in commercial as it is in residential, but you do get that snobbery aspect, right? So in residential real estate, the further away from a landmark or a place, generally the cheaper the real estate gets. The closer you are to the landmark, the more expensive it gets. Is it the same for commercial real estate as well?
It's slightly different, because obviously with commercial, you are sort of tied to whatever license that you necessarily have. So if you're in the mainland, for example, you'd be looking to rent somewhere in Business Bay and downtown, whereas if you had a free zone, you'd probably be looking in JLT in the DMCC. So, and whereas with residential, you can cross-sell quite easily. With commercial, you can't really do that as such. So that's why it's quite specific to the licenses. I mean, there's a lot of new like leasing spaces that are becoming available now, which I think, especially over the coming years, with the new airport that's been launched and everything like that, you've got Expo City, for example, which is an amazing, commercial space. They're obviously building lots of residential there now, so you can obviously live, work. That's the whole idea that they sort of have there. But
Expo City, just to interrupt, is where we held Expo and has now been redeveloped into property and commercial space.
So it's been completely redeveloped. They have residential there. They have an abundance of commercial office spaces. And the good thing about there is obviously you've got, what we're lacking is floor plate sizes. So they have large, office spaces available, whether that be shell and core, whether that be, semi-fitted offices. There's many more options there. And obviously now, as I said, in the coming years, when the airport starts to, open and everything like that, that will be, I really do feel like a real core area of potentially where, commercial will go. Will live, yeah.
Interesting. So you just mentioned there lots of spaces to lease.
Yeah.
Now, again, for folks at home, commercial is the only department within our business where you can do sales and letting. So if somebody's listening to this and I'd like to do commercial real estate, they can join us and operate in lettings and in sales, right? In commercial real estate. Whereas in residential, you are either lettings or sales. Now, what's the split generally for people wanting to buy commercial real estate space versus rent?
I think it's fairly even. I mean, what we have found, especially when we've been looking at the Allsop and Allsop stats, is that over the last, when we look at this year versus H1 last year, there has been an over 40% increase on the rental prices versus 8% for sale. I think what you're tending to find now is that a lot of people that are renting these office spaces, generally they're staying for multiple years to obviously lock in prices and everything like that. But I would say generally it's quite an evenish split. But
then if there's been more than 40% increase in rental figures, that's going to price some people out. That's almost half.
For sure. And what I've been saying to the team as well, now it's really imperative when you are, speaking to applicants or companies, is to really knuckle down what are their priorities. Because, at the moment, with all the will in the world, even if someone has a 10 million dirham budget, there's always going to be something that's not quite right.
Yeah.
And now we're in a situation where the prices are so high for perhaps something last year that wasn't necessarily worth that much. So it's all about whittling down exactly what they're looking for, making sure the requirements are right, to make sure that they manage their clients' expectations in terms of price and budget and everything like that.
So we touched on it earlier on, and we were basically saying that there is a huge undersupply of commercial real estate here in Dubai. And I think we all feel that if you're listening to this and you work in an office that has a lift, the lifts are busy, right?
Yeah.
We know ourselves. I'm sure many of the towers that you're visiting, the lifts are taking an absolute age, which shouldn't complain because it means that occupancy in buildings is high and that, the real estate market is in a good place. But do you think that will slow at all? Because other parts of the world, you have seen a sort of leveling out, right?
Correct.
Or even a decrease. We talked about the HSBC building.
Yeah.
More businesses are coming. More office spaces are required. Less office spaces are being developed. So how do we bridge that gap?
Honestly, I think I honestly don't see the market coming down for commercial. I think I've said previously as well that when you look at, who we've had 19,000 new businesses alone in Q1, all of those people or all of those companies need some sort of commercial entity to set up, whether that be a small office, a bigger office, because of the visa purposes for everybody that's here in terms of their staff. So I really can't see there being, it's slowing down anytime soon. In terms of the supply and demand, I mean, like I said, these new areas such as Expo City, such as your Dubai Commerce City, for example, all of those places which are a little quieter now, I think over the coming, year or so will start to get busy because there'll be no other choice but to branch out.
People will have to develop those areas.
People have to develop those areas a little bit more. And even, not just stick to Business Bay and downtown and JLT. It's going to have to go a little bit further out for sure. It's something has got to give to allow so many new businesses to set up.
Nicer problems to have though, right, Jade?
Yeah, exactly.
We'd rather everything was busy than not.
Exactly.
Obviously, owing to that then, making sure that commercial space inside, you mentioned earlier on, shell and core.
Yeah.
I can't remember the other ones that you mentioned. Fitted,
yeah.
semi-fitted.
Semi-fitted,
We talk a lot on podcast and social media about our office environment.
Yeah.
Nice offices. What's your opinion on fitting out offices to make them nice for people to operate in? Because it's all well and good saying that we've got more people in this part of the world that want to be in an office, they don't want to be in a shitty office.
Exactly.
They want to be in a nice place.
No, exactly. We are seeing a lot more, people that would perhaps take Shell and Core or taking these older offices and really revamping them to, like you said, to make it a nice, welcoming place for people that want to come into work. And so, we deal a lot with commercial, with, fit out companies. So sometimes we will have the fit out companies or the interior designers come with us on, certain viewings to sort of advise the client of perhaps what they could do with the space and how to create a more inviting space for their staff. And I think, over the course of, things are now being updated and everything like that. These offices now, they're wild. Some of them are great. I mean, we've got a running track around ours. Barber shop. I mean, it's crazy. Longer, I think, are gone are the days of where it was just, a coffee machine and a pool table, and that was sort of it. They're thinking so outside the box. It's great.
But being the ultimate perfectionist, when I'm looking at properties or when I go and visit clients or just when I'm generally out and about, first thing I do, this is a really weird thing. I'm sorry to admit this, but I'll look up.
Okay.
And it's all well and good you having nice carpet and furniture and everything else, but if you've got the same old crappy roof tiles or ceiling tiles, whereas I think some businesses try and do a cheap do-up, like a quick lick of paint, some carpet and everything else, whereas you just mentioned there, we have a running track, we have a podcast studio, we have a barbers. Actually, we took our office right back to basic and started again. Yeah. Does that increase the value like it would do if you were renovating a property?
Yeah, of course, because, it saves the next person having to, want to do it. But yeah, like I said, even, to be honest, even some of the smaller offices that necessarily you can't fit everything in, you can do such nice fit outs, even with such a small space, if you just design it and the lighting that you use to create it and everything like that, the partitions, the quality of the partitions, you're seeing a lot more now, not just your, bog standard glass, it's the crickle doors and things like that. And it looks so chic, and like I said, and when you're viewing them, even like as an agent, you get more excited by them because, you're not, viewing an old office that's tired and everything like that. It looks fresh. It's more engaging. I think if you have staff in there, you're going to get a lot more engagement and work from them.
Well, I guess actually, and I've never really thought about it like that, but it is very similar to residential real estate.
Yeah,
if you view something which is a little bit different or upgraded or, not the norm, one, it makes you more excited as an agent, but I guess it probably makes the client go, "Oh, this is nice.
Yeah,
I can see my business here."
Of course. Because like you said, you've touched on the whole lifts and everything like that, and that is a problem across the board. Regardless of what building you're in, there's always issues with, communal parts and the lifts and everything like that. And that's just where we're at the moment with it. It is what it is. But if you can create a really unique space in that office space, it makes such a big difference. It really, really does. So, yeah.
I agree. And I like the fact that we've referenced that lifts are a problem across the whole of Dubai. So you heard that here first. There's no easy fix. No. Let's shed a little bit of light. If somebody's listening to this podcast who is thinking about purchasing or renting commercial real estate, what would you say is the hot area? Or maybe the underdog area that they should be aware of? I know you touched on Expo City earlier on, but anything else or anywhere else?
Well, I mean, Expo City, for example, you can only lease there. You can't actually purchase there. It's the same as somewhere like Dubai Commerce City as well. But it depends on the nature of the business that they are wanting to set up, which will obviously then dictate really which area that you could set or, start your business up, if that makes sense. But really, like I said, predominantly, if you're wanting to be sort of in the hustle and bustle of things, you'd obviously looking at downtown, Business Bay, JLT.
But you've got to have a decent wedge for those areas.
Yeah,
right?
of course. I mean, to be honest, like I said, even across the board, wherever you go now, it's all, there is the prices have really shot up. So it is important to make sure that when you are speaking to one of our agents, you go over everything like budget and things like that in more detail.
You still have to qualify an individual, right?
For sure, yeah.
And can I ask this? Just again, much like, and I'm sorry that I'm comparing resi and commercial such a lot, but is there the same you view a property.
Yeah.
It's got the pool, it's got the nice walk-in wardrobe, or whatever it is. Do you get that that feeling from customers when they're looking at office spaces, or do you feel that it's more transactional?
No, there is a lot. It's a lot less emotional in commercial. Obviously, you're dealing predominantly with businesses and things like that. So obviously, it's not as an emotional purchase as something like buying your forever home. However, we do have, each building has their own little grade. So, when you're going into the Opus, for example, it's such a lovely space to walk into. You've got the hotel there, you've got Rocker, you've got Maine, all these amazing restaurants at your doorstep. Yeah. So it's really nice. You do get that sense of luxury when you go into a building like that. But again, it depends on budget. It depends on what your preference is as a client. Do you want to be close to the metro? Is that the priority? In which case, then maybe that wouldn't be the best building for you, and things like that. But yeah, you do get a real sense of excitement when you're going into these, high-end luxury office buildings, for sure.
Yeah, Opus is probably one of my favourites.
Oh, it's amazing. And architecturally, it's gorgeous as well.
Yeah, everything about it. Okay, let's touch back on your journey, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I'm going to be kind, don't worry. But you said earlier that there were some elements of Allsop and Allsop that you missed in terms of like the structure or the framework. Let's touch on that in a little bit more detail, because I think that as a business, we do what we say on the tin, right? Yeah. It's that whole thing of what you see is what you get. Love us or not, we are what we are.
Yeah.
When you've come back, even though it was only a short stint away, what did you notice and you thought, this is cool, this is different?
What, apart from the office?
I mean, apart from the office, yeah.
I think for me, obviously, when I came to Dubai, Allsop and Allsop was my home, really, for a number of years. So you get accustomed to seeing the people every day and building those relationships. And I think, coming back just to reestablish those, it does feel like I've come back to family, which is really nice. And it feels almost a bit like my safe space.
Were you worried about how anybody would react about you coming back?
No, I don't think so. Like you said, it was quite a short stint that I was gone for. And no, like I said, I'm just delighted to be back and back trying, to build the commercial team, which is exciting.
Well, that's the most amazing thing. So you're heading up our commercial team, and I think we'll just touch on that briefly, because ultimately, again, when people are interviewing with me, they'll say, so what's the progression pathway for me? If I join as a lettings consultant, what next? And you are a clear example of somebody that has followed a trajectory, right? Yeah. You joined us as lettings, as we said earlier on, then into commercial, and now heading up a team. And it's nice for you to have been at grassroots level, seen how the business operates, clearly got the endorsement of people that work in our business, and now leading a team and driving everybody forward. Yeah. What would you say, and you can say this piece to the camera, if somebody's thinking about joining commercial and they think, Jade looks nice. Yeah, I am nice. not that we needed confirmation. But, Jade looks nice. What would be your advice to anybody thinking, should I make the move? One, to Dubai, to operate in real estate, but maybe they're operating in a completely different sector in Dubai, and they're thinking, maybe I'll do commercial real estate.
I mean, to be honest, before I joined Allsop, I was myself a residential agent back in London. So I had never really heard too much about commercial. So when I got asked, do you want to go into commercial? I was a bit like, this sounds like a bit of a cop out from residential. I'd sort of had it in my head. No, I want to sell villas. No, I want to do, villa areas and things like that. And I think, commercial is, like I said, I've never looked back. I think it's a fantastic industry, and I feel very privileged that actually to be part of the commercial sector. I feel that whereas residential, it's quite oversaturated, commercial not necessarily as much. And I think that here we've got a great team, a great base, and I'm really excited about the next few years and where the commercial team is going to go at Allsop and Allsop. And
I like that. Well, I think ultimately, if we talk about commercial real estate, it sounds, and I'm sorry to say this, but it could sound a bit boring, right? Commercial real estate. I'm not selling $1 million villas in Jumeirah Golf Estates. But it's actually not the case. And when you think commercial real estate isn't necessarily a grotty office with the minging ceiling tiles that we've mentioned before, it's head offices for the likes of luxury fashion houses
Blue
and
chip companies.
blue chip companies, car
Massive
dealerships, corporate offices. There's so, but I don't think people necessarily get that when you say commercial real estate.
Yeah, there's so many different avenues you can go down. You've got the F&B, you've got retail, you've got industrial. There's so many different avenues that you can go down with commercial. Obviously, predominantly, I'd say like 95% of our deals are all offices, but those offices are not, some are, don't get me wrong, are smaller. But 9 times out of 10, you are in nice office space, and it's the connections that you meet as well.
Yeah.
You are dealing with a lot more, CEOs, C-suite executives, and things like that, which is also really nice. So if you're coming from maybe not necessarily a real estate background, but a business background of some sort, it can be a great transition into the real estate world, coming into commercial for sure.
Well, it's relationship based, just as real estate is anyway, but relationship based, business to business.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, precisely,
Because you're helping somebody grow their business, which is incredible. Yeah. We're going to go slightly off script.
Okay.
You ready?
Hit me.
What I would like to know. What I would like to know is commission or commissions within the real estate space. They're often talked about, right?
Yeah.
And for good or for bad, you make too much money in real estate. Am I right in thinking that fees in commercial real estate are somewhat higher than residential?
Yeah, so if we look at it from a sales point of view, it's the same. Industry standard, 2% from the seller, 2% from the buyer. With the leasing side of things, we always do charge 10%. And that's 10% from the landlord, 10% from the tenant, which I know is slightly different to
it is.
residential. But yeah, and that's another great thing about obviously coming onto a commercial team is that you can experience doing lettings and the sales side, which to be honest, I personally think grows you as a much more rounded agent because you get to know the entire process. You understand how it works to rent a unit, and you also understand the whole buying process as well. So inevitably, it's going to improve you professionally as well when you're having these conversations. It's really useful to know the marketing rates of everything and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, the fees are considerably higher in commercial.
You heard it here. You heard it first.
Yes.
You can earn a lot more money and you can be operating with you. Jade, from the perspective of your team, you're growing the team, in conjunction with the recruitment team here at Allsop and Allsop. Yeah. You're looking for commercial brokers to join you, whether non-experienced but have that B2B maybe experience back in their home country, or if they're operating here in the marketplace as a commercial real estate broker, you're interested in speaking to them, right?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Fabulous. So, Jade, we've established that there is a massive undersupply of commercial real estate here in Dubai, and especially in comparison to other parts of the world. We've established that people prefer being in the office, and that's employers and employees. Yep. Again, very different in comparison to other parts of the world. You're happy to be back.
I am.
You're
very
excited
happy.
about the future and what the commercial team is going to look like under your stewardship. And ultimately, we've established that if anybody's looking to join you, there's plenty of money to be made in commercial real estate.
For sure.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thank you and welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. If you're interested in watching the next episode of Taking Care of Business, make sure that you like and share and don't forget to subscribe.